Ooh, that's a big one. Make sure you want to be a lawyer. There's there's a lot of time, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of personal and emotional distress that can go into law school. And anyone who's been to law school can tell you that it's in the Marine Corps, we call them diamond factories. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of heat, and that is on purpose because you need to be made into a person that can go into a high pressure environment and keep your cool and see the case through to its completion.
Welcome to the Texas Lawyer Podcast, where we share stories from those who choose to practice law in the great state of Texas. I'm your host, Cheryl McGirr, and today we're sitting with one of our sitting judiciary here in Central Texas, a lawyer who went from the halls of Montezuma and the shores of Tripoli to residing over Williamson County Court at Law Number 5. Today, we're talking with Judge Will Ward. Thanks for joining us, Judge. How are you today?
Happy to be here. Doing good. Thank you.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your life before practicing law.
Yeah. The Cliff Notes version is born and raised in North Texas, graduated high school in Mineral Wells, and knew that I needed to get out of Mineral Wells. And it sounds cliche, but I had seen a few good men, and that's what really kind of prompted me towards going into the Marine Corps. I was lucky enough that I got a 4-year ROTC scholarship from the Marine Corps, and I used that to go to the Virginia Military Institute in Lexington, Virginia. Graduated there and got my commission and started the summer of 2000 at the basic school and branched as a combat engineer officer. Got stationed at Camp Lejeune. Did a couple of small deployments before 9/11 and before the war in Iraq, and then did 2 tours in Iraq out of Camp Lejeune. Came back, was immediately ordered to Okinawa, Japan, and got to Japan, took over company command, and then went back to Iraq a 3rd time while I was stationed in Japan. And was sent back to Quantico, and I went to the captain's level school, expeditionary warfare school, and then got to stay at Quantico and be a instructor at the basic school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So one of my roommates when I was at Camp Lejeune ended up getting out, going to law school, and he brought me to Charleston, South Carolina, and got to kind of see him in law school. And he said that it was super cool and that I would really, really like it. So I started kind of kicking it around right around that time. Frankly, I was pretty tired of getting shot at and traveling the world and wanted to do something and come back home to Texas. So in 2008, really started doing the preparatory work for getting out, taking advantage of the post 9/11 GI Bill, finding a law school here in Texas, and ended up at Texas Tech University School of Law. Matriculated there in the fall of 2009, and then graduated December of 11. And then I got my first real lawyer job as an assistant district attorney in Brazos County, Texas, Aggie land.
Okay, I'm going to take you back just a little bit. Um, it's so interesting how so many attorneys had prior careers before going to law school. And so, what were some, or was there anything in your past that made you go, yeah, I need to go into law? We all make cost benefit analysis for the lack of a better term of, well, if you pick this, you can't do this. And so I'm sure there was probably some of you that I'm guessing maybe there was a career of law or for a different direction rather than on the battlefield as an officer in the military.
Yeah, my undergraduate is in mechanical engineering, and this is going to shock you, but there's not a whole lot of mechanical engineering that goes on when you're a combat engineer officer with the Marine Corps. So after it was not quite 10 years of active duty, I knew that getting out, I was going to have to do something career training wise. After 10 years of not doing differential equations and chemistry and physics, I figured it was probably going to be a real heavy lift to go back and develop those skill sets again. So, like my friend Wes said, we kind of dug listening to legal stuff on TV, watched a whole lot of Law and Order. Both of us thought, man, we could really do that. So
Yeah.
that was a big portion of just realizing that if I'm going to get out and be a productive member in the civilian world, I'm going to have to get some skills before I get out.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I often say now, I think what I wanted to be was a lawyer on TV, because being a lawyer in real life is sure different than that. But I was inspired a lot by Law and Order a little bit, but the practice was super inspirational to me with at least the criminal defense attorneys that they had in the practice. There was a lot of drama. Of course, it was a soap opera in the evenings, but there was a couple of really great arguments that they made where they're pleading for their client who they really believe is innocent, and some great closing arguments that I heard in that show that were just really inspirational to me as well. Yeah, so I was curious. You piqued my interest about you were an instructor for a little while. How long did you
Mm-hmm.
do that, and what kind of instruction were you doing?
Other than this judge job that I have, it was the second best job I've ever had. So when you get done with officers candidate school, you have been screened that you are a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. And then the Marine Corps, at the time, the services are a little different now, says, okay, you're not even a basically trained second lieutenant. So we're going to take the next 6 months and we're going to train you to be a competent company level officer, infantry
Mm-hmm.
officer. So you report to the basic school and they really start teaching you over that 6 month. It's very intensive training, just how to be an officer in the Marine Corps. You go over everything from admin, logistics, platoon and company level infantry tactics, heavy machine guns, a little bit of mechanized, uh, artillery, indirect fires, being able to call in close air support, just giving you that basic broad foundational knowledge before you then move on to your actual military occupational specialty. So everybody's there. And then, some lieutenants would go off to be pilots. Some would go off to be communications officers. Some of us went off to be engineers and then infantry officers and whatnot. So it really helps to have that unifying baseline training as an officer. Every officer in the Marine Corps goes to the basic school. Everyone has that touchstone that's back there. I was lucky that I got to go back and take over the combat orders and tactical decision-making package there at the basic school. And then after About 9 months of doing that, I got selected to be a staff platoon commander in one of the training companies. So I had a platoon of brand new lieutenants that I had to ride herd on for 6 months and had a really good time doing that. And during that time was the time that I was taking to gauge whether I wanted to stay in or whether I wanted to go ahead and leave active duty service. So it was just a really great time, really beneficial. Got to spend a lot of time out in the tree line in Quantico, Virginia, with cami paint on my face and sweating through my camouflage utilities and pulling ticks off of various places in my body. So it's just a wonderful job. Wonderful job.
So, what did it feel like when you made the decision, leaving the Corps, I'm all in for law school? How did that transition go for you? And did it feel like a slow realization of I'm taking one step and I'm confirming this is the right path for me? Or was there, this is what I'm going to do kind of moment? What was it for you?
It was terrifying because I had known nothing in the last 10 years other than being a United States Marine, and the government provided all things, a salary, meals, lodging, transportation. We weren't all confined to base and living a monastic lifestyle. We all lived out in apartments in and about, but that transition was abrupt and it was terrifying to say the least. So it was much like burning the ships at the shoreline. There, in my mindset, it was there's no going back. I'm not going to dip a toe out and run back like a scalded dog to Mother Marine Corps. It was, I'm getting out. I need to focus and I need to make sure that I have all of the skills that are going to make me a productive civilian.
So I remember my 1L year, that first year of law school is tough. So did you have any questions at the end of law school of like, well, maybe this is the right thing to do? Or did you feel confirmed in your heart at the end of that 1L year that, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm in for the long haul?
I was about 10 years older than everybody else that was in my section. So law school was different for me. There were a couple of older guys that were also in my section, and we clicked up pretty early and made sure that we were supporting each other getting through this. You can definitely tell the difference between people that have had a career and are in law school and are there to get the education, get the training, and get out and do something versus some of my other peers that were just coming out of 4-year undergrad at a school that was not Virginia Military Institute. And that, you got to remember, that was 09 to 11 time period. So the Great Recession had happened. The job prospects were just awful and terrible. I had flirted with the idea that I wasn't going to be a government lawyer, wasn't going to be a prosecutor, and went and had some friends that got me some interviews with some civil law firms up in the North Texas area. And it really benefited me talking with those attorneys that they took a look at me and talked with me and said, I don't think the civil world will match your mindset and disposition. You're probably looking to be a part of a bigger organization. And frankly, county attorneys and district attorneys' offices throughout the state are better prepared to give you that type of camaraderie and that type of training and that type of lifestyle that you've grown accustomed with in the Marine Corps, instead of being out alone and unafraid as a solo practitioner, or perhaps joining a smaller firm and having to kill what you eat So
Yeah. I understand that. It's interesting. I was also about 10 years older than most of my classmates at law school. I had gone into education and then worked in the travel industry for a while prior to my law school. And so it was definitely a different perspective from, I was 31, I think, and I was there with 23-year-olds. And so I had been out. I had worked at a large company. I had worked at small companies. I had done a little bit of my own entrepreneurial of running a company. And so I had a lot more different experiences in the same way I'm sure you did, that it just comes with living life. And if you've lived life and experienced things, I think it's helpful. I think it brings a different perspective to the practice of law than someone that maybe's never done anything other than go to school and then become a lawyer. So tell me, you mentioned that you were pointed in the direction by some attorneys to look at prosecutor's office. So tell me about some of those challenges that you faced as a young prosecutor.
well, the first was finding a job. The market for prosecutors, particularly right now in Anno Domini 2026, is very lucrative. Young lawyers don't want to be prosecutors. There's a lot of things that have happened legally with the legislature that make it difficult to be a prosecutor, particularly if you're wanting to keep your law license for longer than about 5 minutes. I tell all the young prosecutors who come in to my court is, every time you step in, you're ending up your bar card. So make sure you're doing this stuff right so you can keep your bar card. And I was really lucky to have spent a semester, maybe a little bit more than a semester, interning at the Lubbock DA's office. And the DA at the time, Matt Powell, is an Aggie in Lubbock prosecuting Red Raiders. And he was good friends with Bill Turner, who is a Red Raider and was prosecuting Aggies in College Station. So Matt Powell got me an interview, and Bill Turner very graciously hired me. And I will be grateful to both of those gentlemen for as long as I live, because, like I said, it was kind of a tough hiring environment during that time. And Bill took a chance on a brand new lawyer who was, 32, 33 years old, and made me a felony prosecutor from jump. He also happened to surround me with some really outstanding felony prosecutors who'd been doing it for a long time. They were my training wheels and make sure that I didn't crash and burn. So it's hard to describe the actual employment problems and dilemmas that were going on for lawyers back then, particularly because everyone wanted to become a prosecutor at the time and get a job.
I can imagine it was pretty competitive. So you started working in, what was that, Washington County? Were you in Washington, or was it
Brazos County?
Brazos County. Okay. Boy, that's some pretty country there, especially in the springtime.
The heart of Aggie land.
It is the heart of Aggie land. So what were some challenges being a young lawyer prosecuting felonies right away? What are some of the challenges you faced in that environment?
Unless you're at a law school that does a lot of focus on trial skills development, I've always told people that going to law school is a lot like going to bicycle repair school, and they never let you touch the tools. You know the theory, but being able to get in and deal with the actual nuts and bolts and see how they combine and are able to be disassembled is something that it takes time getting in front of a judge and in court and doing those things.
I can relate to that. I was very fortunate. I went to Baylor, and they did thoroughly prepare us for the courtroom. And I remember my first hearing in front of a real judge. I was defending a motion for summary judgment, and there was $100,000 on the line. My client was going to lose $100,000 if I lost that hearing. And I was just a few weeks out of law school. My boss handed me a file and said, go defend this motion. And I felt like I knew the law. I felt like the law was on our side and that we should win. But you never know. And it's so nerve-wracking when the first time you stand up in front of a judge. And I did win that day, rightly so. And but I remember when you go through a hard time, there's just that kind of exhaustion at the end. It was like an hour hearing where my adrenaline was up the whole time. And then there was this exhaustion. And I was like, how do lawyers, they don't go to Baylor or other schools that really prepare them for trial, how do they handle the pressure of someone having that much at stake, whether in the criminal defense world, whether it's their freedom, or whether in the civil world, which was my first hearing, was $100,000. This man was, I was like, that was a lot of money. That is a lot of money, and it was on me to make sure he got to keep it. And it's a lot of pressure.
I was lucky. I got paired up with a fantastic prosecutor by the name of Ryan Calvert and placed in with the 272nd District Court under Judge Travis Bryan III, who was an incredibly patient and incredibly forgiving judge. And I got to make a lot of mistakes on a lot of things without it being catastrophic to my career. And a lot of attorneys don't have that capability, particularly if they're not going into a DA's or CA's office, and they're not going to be in front of one judge constantly. They're not going to be able to kind of figure out the personality quirks or preferences of the judge, and it's like tiptoeing through a minefield as you're bouncing from court to court. And when you're dealing with felony cases, there's always the possibility of going to prison on those cases. So, and getting back to what you were talking about, having that life experience prior to coming in, being able to take a look at a case, being able to judge a case, frankly, when it comes to misdemeanors, it's a little bit easier for me to have this conversation sometimes, but you realize that some of these people, most of these people, particularly with misdemeanors, they're not bad people. They just made a mistake. So difference is that when you get into felonies, sometimes they're really, really bad people.
Yeah.
And being able to draw on that life experience and take a look at a case, being able to take a look at an individual defendant and realizing, is this person dumb or is this person mean, is something that you just can't teach in the classroom. You have to have that broad base of experience to be able to make those types of value judgments.
And I'm sure having good law partners, good partners that you're trying your cases with who have more experience, I'm sure that was really helpful in developing that discernment. And of course, probably being a leader in the Marines, you've probably been able to identify patterns of behavior pretty well too. I was speaking with Lisa Hoeing recently, and we were talking about how, as a defense attorney, I have my one loyalty is to my client, to zealously advocate for my client. But the prosecutor has a duty to do justice, and how it can be. They're not just looking to win every case. They want to make sure justice is done. And so I think that adds a layer of complexity to the job of being a lawyer and being a good lawyer.
Being a prosecutor is an incredibly difficult profession, particularly if you want to do it well, and particularly if you want to do it for a long time. And everyone really, I think, sometimes undersells that fact. So when when you get these young lawyers that choose to go into that, you really have to cultivate them professionally, which is, hey, you're doing a hard job. I'm not going to let you do anything that's going to get your bar card lit on fire. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to learn from those mistakes. And then at some point in time, if you're going to stay in this game long enough, you're going to have to turn around and you're going to have to take young lawyers underneath your wing, and you're going to have to mentor them the same way that you were mentored as a young lawyer.
Yeah, how long were you a prosecutor?
I think just a little over 10 years, 2012 until, so June of 2012 until October of 2022.
So in October of 2022, you were appointed by the governor to be the first judge in our new Williamson County Court at Law 5. Kind of tell us what led you to pursue becoming a judge, and how is that working out for you?
So back in 2021, I was working a lot with Judge Rick Kennan throughout all of COVID in 2021 while I was in the DA's office in the intake and grand jury division. And he announced that he was retiring, and I went and talked with him and asked him if he thought it would be okay for me to run for his bench. And he said, okay. So throughout the latter half of 2021 and up until March of 2022, I was in the campaign, the primary campaign for the 368th Judicial District Bench. I did not win that primary. And luckily for me, I at least made a good impression on the county commissioners, because the governor gets to appoint district court benches that are open, and then the county commissioners are responsible for appointing the vacancies for county courts of law.
Okay, so it was the county commissioners who appointed you, not the governor. Okay.
Correct.
Yes, and you know what? I think I knew that, but I had forgotten that. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really cool. So, did you apply for that position and then they choose, or did you get sought out?
I did. I applied for it. So in the early part of the 2021 legislature, they had authorized a new district court and a new county court at law for Williamson County. I had also applied for a governor's appointment for the 480th, which is here in Wilco. Mm-hmm. And that ended up going to now Justice Scott Field. And I was a little bit upset and perturbed that I didn't get that appointment until I met Justice Scott Field and realized what an incredible person and just an amazing judge he is. And then I realized, oh, that's why I didn't get it. And I had gone and talked to Judge John McMaster about the county court at law bench, and he told me that it would probably be more in my wheelhouse because it was criminal and civil, and I should probably make a stab for that. So I began the process of interviewing individually with the county commissioners. I know there were a couple other people that had applied for it, and then they had an executive session where all the applicants interviewed with the court as a whole, and then they ended up appointing me to that. And my joke is that it's always easier to get 5 people to vote for you than it is to get 40,000 people to vote for you. So that was an unexpected blessing on my part. And if I could go back in time and tell myself that being a county court at law judge would be better than anything that I could have imagined, then I would definitely take that opportunity.
Yeah. And so you did have to run again in 2024, or run for the first time in 2024. But I don't believe, were you opposed in that election? I cannot remember. So
Unopposed.
and that's a great testament to how you're running the courtroom. That's just a great testament to how you're running the courtroom. That means that the lawyers who are coming in front of you aren't so mad that you're doing something a certain way that they're not going to try to run against you. And I certainly, as an attorney in front of you on many occasions, appreciate the way you run your courtroom. I think you do a great job. It's efficient. It's respectful of both the litigants and the defense the defendants, of the attorneys, and I really do appreciate the organization that goes on in your courtroom. I haven't had a civil case in front of you yet, so that'll be interesting. I don't think I have anything pending coming up either, so we'll just have to put it off to the future. It seems so funny because on the will in Williamson County. Not the court appointed will. I'm on that will as well, but the will for where the cases get thrown to is, I don't think I've had a civil case thrown into your court. It seems like they come for me, because I know that I'm putting in one case right now. There's all these other attorneys putting in at the same time. It's just rotating, but it seems I have been in front of Judge Davis and in front of Judge Arnold. That's where I've been living lately in Williamson County. I would like to know, what advice would you give someone who's thinking about going to law school?
I think it would be, make sure you want to be a lawyer. There is a lot of financial, personal, emotional stresses that go along with choosing this career. And if you get through your 1L year, 2L year, 3L year, and don't want to be a lawyer, then that is, I'm not going to say it's a bad education, but you probably could have applied that time and effort into training and education for another career. This is a tough job, and you're always going to be dealing with clients. And that may be one thing that we really don't tell aspiring lawyers, the whole ugly truth on that is you're always going to be working for someone, and your best efforts, your fiduciary responsibilities, your moral and ethical obligations belong to that person, the case, and making sure that everything goes well with it, both legally and to the benefit of your client. And that doesn't matter whether you're a solo practitioner or whether you work for the government. And it is enormously taxing. It's taxing on you. It's taxing on your family. It's taxing on lots and lots of things that you probably haven't even considered. And unless you're willing to really obligate yourself, then it could be a bad decision on your part, both financially and psychologically. So take a really good measure of why it is that you want to go to law school. That's to be a lawyer.
Yeah, I agree. I often tell people that when I was going through my decision process of whether or not I was going to law school, I was in an industry where I had an opportunity to interact with a lot of lawyers. And so when I'm trying to decide, of course, I ask everyone, as soon as I found out they were a lawyer, where did you go to law school? Why did you go to law school? Do you regret going to law school? And almost to a person, no one ever regretted going to law school. And some of them were not we're not really enjoying the practice of law anymore, but almost everyone appreciated the education. So that's a different viewpoint to say, make sure you really want to be a lawyer, make sure you really want to be responsible in a way that most people are not responsible for others in their lives. I mean, I think of doctors, they're responsible for our physical health. But when we have people come to see us, they're usually in crisis. There's a reason why they're stepping into a lawyer's office. And it makes it really, it's a lot of pressure to provide the best service you can to help this person who a lot of times through no fault of their own has found themselves in this legal situation, and sometimes through some fault of their own, but they didn't think it was going to blow up to what it was. So most people are in crisis when they're seeking out an attorney, and they really do need someone who can counsel and guide them and be willing to take that responsibility for thinking through the consequences of all the possible paths they can walk down in the process.
Yeah, no client ever wakes up in the morning and says, man, what a great day. No clouds on the horizon. I think I should go talk to an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And knowing what the consequences of different paths, whether in the criminal world, whether it's accepting a plea agreement or taking it to a jury trial, or whether in the civil world, taking it to a jury trial or settling for something less than what you think you're maybe entitled to in the civil arena. There's consequences with all of those decisions. And it's hard for individuals very often because they're in a very emotional state. And so the lawyer can come alongside and give them some unemotional, logical advice about these are the paths that are before us. These are the choices that we have. And here are some of the consequences. If we choose this path, this is what we can likely expect, and having that voice. And so that's a huge responsibility, because if I advise someone completely incorrectly as to what the consequence of their decision is, that could change their life. And so it is a heavy burden, but it's also so worthwhile. There's so many. I wish I still had these flowers on my desk. I've only on a couple of occasions gotten flowers from a client, but I got a bouquet of flowers from a client last week, and it was from a client who was in front of you, and you found him guilty, and he was sentenced. And I had told him we knew what the sentence was going to be. It was a plea agreement. He was so happy for the resolution of the process because before I ever became a lawyer, my cousin, who was part-time law enforcement at the time, he said, "You may beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride." And it is often a ride through the criminal justice system. And this gentleman was so glad to be off the ride. He was so happy. And I had worked hard for him, and he knew it. And I appreciated that he appreciated me, and it was the gratitude in his eyes because he was so concerned about what turned out to be not a very egregious offense. But he had never been in trouble with the law before. It was such an overwhelming thing to him. And what a good feeling on my part to be able to help him through that process. Yeah, did he do the act? Yes, he did. He ended up pleading guilty, but he got a very fair sentence for it. And he learned a lesson, and he's never going to do that again. And so to be able to help people in that way, and sometimes we can even avoid having to have the conviction consequence. Sometimes there's paths that we can avoid that, and then still be able to be educated and learn. I know working in the misdemeanor realm, I do a lot of misdemeanors, and I see you a lot in misdemeanor court. And a lot of our clients are young. They're young, and they're just maybe no one's ever told them about how to think through some of these decisions they're making in their lives, and to be able to speak into someone's life in that way is a gift, but it's also a responsibility. So I do think it is a heavy responsibility. And I think most of the attorneys that I know take that responsibility really to heart, and they give their clients everything they have. And that's how the system works, right? The defense attorney gives it all they have, the prosecutor gives it all they have, and then you, along with the jury, determine what justice is. Is that intimidating to you at times, to be the one who's determining what justice is in that situation?
No, not really. And the reason for that is, and I had some good conversations with Judge Burke Carnes before he left us. And, he told me I was coming from being a felony prosecutor to being a misdemeanor judge. And he warned me not to take the whole mindset into the job that I had as a prosecutor, because he told me, felony offenses are bad. The people that do those things typically are bad. Misdemeanors, they made a mistake, they're typically dumb. And nobody wants to carry for the rest of their life a dumb mistake that is a one-off. And realizing that the process is not supposed to be a part of the punishment. Mm-hmm. If you treat everyone with dignity and respect and courtesy and just try to get through the process and get it to a just resolution at the end, treating everyone with courtesy and respect and dignity, then you reinforce the rightness and the justness of our criminal justice system. And you also let people, if they've made a mistake, you let them recover from that mistake and go forth and be the decent human being that they probably are for the rest of their life. So for me, it's an awesome responsibility, and I take it gladly. And I remind myself every day that, this is a job for me, but the people that are out there in the well, this is their worst day. So have the humility to not compound everyone's errors. The whole purpose of what we're being there is to make sure that the behavior stops. There's an appropriate sentence that reinforces that you should never do this behavior again, and then people can get on with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we really appreciate that as attorneys appearing in front of you. Where do you think, I think I know the answer to this question, but where is the practice of law sending you next? Does this feel like home for a while, or is there something else on the horizon?
I am delighted to be entrusted with County Court at Law 5 bench. I see myself as a caretaker or custodian of the bench for as long as the people of Williamson County will let me retain it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a United States Marine at heart. I'm always ambitious. I always am looking for things. I don't know where that's going to take me. I think it's taken me to the best job that I've ever had in my life. I got to hire the best people. I'd like to take all the credit for what happens in County Court at Law 5, but it is a function of the staff and my bailiff, and they have Court 5 running like a well-oiled machine. And I think it's best sometimes when everything's going your way and everything is looking great, you just kind of shut up and enjoy where you're at. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm just really enjoying being judge of County Court at Law 5 right now.
Judge, I want to thank you for being with us today. And with that, the Texas Lawyer Podcast is adjourned for today. What was your biggest takeaway? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to leave a review, like, and subscribe, and share us with your friends. Thanks.